Logo, Indeed, one search, all jobs. Text, at Indeed ENG. Monthly tech talks at Indeed's Austin headquarters. Engineering.indeed.com.
So thank you everybody for coming, and welcome to Indeed. First, let us introduce Indeed for those of you that might not be familiar with the product.
Slide, crawl 100K plus sites, brand logos.
Indeed is a search engine for jobs. We index and include jobs from and crawl hundreds of thousands of websites all over the world, from employers, job boards, staffing agencies, recruiters, to provide a comprehensive job offer to job seekers all over the world.
What and where? Indeed homepage.
It's a very simple product. We ask job seekers to do two things, tell us what they want to do and where they want to do it, and hopefully we provide the results they want and the job they were looking for. Tonight, we're going to talk how we exported, how we internationalized this product in over 50 countries and 28 different languages. First of all, let me introduce myself. I am Davide Novelli, Director of International Online Operations, a task which includes supporting the launch and the development of new markets. I started in 2010 as the country managers for Italy, and since I had a background in localization, soon after I started helping out Indeed with its international expansion. Like everybody else, I want to show the shirt, I help people get jobs. That's what we do here. Particularly, I do that around the world. So let's start with a little bit of history of Indeed.
Progression of countries added on a global map.
Indeed started in 2004 in the United States, and soon after expanded to Canada in 2005. By 2006, we already indexed our 100 millionth job, which was in Exton, Pennsylvania. And at that point, we were indexing 3.9 million new jobs every month on the site. We crossed the ocean and landed in UK in 2007 and India in 2008, together with our first three countries that were served not in English, which were Germany, France, and Spain. At that point, 2008, we indexed our 200 millionth job, which was outside of the United States now, in Canada, Edmonton, Alberta. And we were indexing about 7.1 million new jobs every month. So about twice the previous threshold. 2009, 12 new countries, among which Italy, that got me here, and China, Japan, Australia, Brazil, Mexico, Netherlands, big, important economies. 2010 is the countries when we really pushed with our international expansion, with launching quite a few countries at the beginning of the year, among which Sweden, Poland, South Africa, Israel, and Antarctica.
A penguin stands in place of the eye in Indeed's Antarctica logo.
Which was originally an April Fool's Day joke, but the site's still up and running. There are 45 positions open in Antarctica if you guys want to spend the summer somewhere cooler. Antarctica also brought Indeed to all 7 continents. But that was not enough. Same year, 2010, 24 more countries. And to consolidate the product and engineering efforts that are involved into launching new markets, we decided to do this in one day. So on July 15, 2010, we launched 24 countries and 14 additional languages. That brought Indeed not only in 7 continents, but in more than 50 countries in the world. I remember Indeed employee number 1, Chris Lampret, saying that was impressive since he remembered the day that Indeed actually had jobs in all 50 states in the United States. So being in 50 countries felt good. 2011, we took a little break and just added a couple of languages, Bahasa Indonesia and Arabic. And as you can see, that was a lot of fun. And we indexed our billionth job, which was now in Buenos Aires, Argentina. At that point, we were indexing 32.5 million new jobs every month on Indeed. Last 2 countries we added, 2013, Vietnam and Thailand. And that brought Indeed to its current geographical configurations in more than 50 countries and 28 different languages. This is a Thai job, it's the 2 billion something, you say it, and in case you want to go to Thailand instead of Antarctica. And by that time, we were including about 41.3 million new jobs every month on our search all around the world.
Internet population and world GDP pie charts.
That covers about, indeed, in all these countries, 87.6% of the world internet population and 94% of our GDP. So before we dive into how we did this, we want to spend a few words for the people who did this, who helped us achieve this. Because Indeed is a very product-focused company, but we believe that the best product is done by hiring the best people. And international was not an exception. We decided from early on that if we were going to do this, we had to hire people that had the knowledge, the language, knowing the language, the culture, and the markets we were going in. And so we did.
Photos and locations of CMAs and interns.
The team grew quickly, and it became now the team that it is right now that includes 26 different nationalities, speaking at native level 18 languages, and leveraging the work of 38 contractors all around the world. And I would ask the CM today that are here in the room to stand up for a second.
Several people stand.
CMs are country managers.
International strategy and operations. Markets, Northern Europe, Southern Europe and new markets, Latin America, English, East Asia. Cross-market, strategy, business ops, online ops.
Country managers are split into 5 different macro regions, and they're supported by 3 very efficient teams that support their strategy, their business operations, and their online operation, and make their daily work much more efficient. Indeed is, if you guys have seen the website, our tagline is one search, all jobs. With CMs, we kind of joke, and we have one country manager, all jobs. This is because the country managers are really the soul of our international expansion. They are like, when we launch a new country, it's like a startup. And the country manager is the entrepreneur that has to wear many hats and take care of everything is necessary, working with all the teams to get things done and make sure that the market is a success.
International responsibilities.
They translate, localize text, and make sure that all the features are working properly. They make sure that our jobs are of good quality and job seekers are only exposed to good jobs. They make sure that we have them all, that our website is as comprehensive as it can be, where every time there is a job up there, we can put it on Indeed. And they support both the product team and the online marketing team with all the insight to inform their decision to make us successful everywhere. They support our job seekers and support our business, our offices outside, with all it's needed, all the data, the intelligence, the legal advice sometimes when it's necessary. And the fact that they touch base in all these areas with all this team makes them a key figure to design our strategy internationally. Let's now talk about how we did it. And there's a lot to talk about.
A list which includes translation and localization, content development, quality assurance, and more.
This is a very long list. We are not going to talk about everything. We picked a few things that we will discuss tonight that we consider very important, but all of these things are extremely important, and if you decide to go international, you will have to take care of them all. Let's start with translation, since usually it is the thing that first comes to mind when thinking about another country. We need to be understandable. Translation, the first question that pops up is like, why don't we use Google Translate? It's cheap, it's quick. So we're going to tell a little story of why we don't do that. If you go to Indeed About page, the first sentence says, Indeed is the #1 job site worldwide. In 2010, we tried to Google Translate this sentence into French. And we got that Munster was the #1 job site worldwide. That was absolutely unacceptable, so we contacted Google and asked them to fix this glitch. And they did. And in 2012, I guess to compensate, they were translating that Indeed is the best place to work in the world. True. But still a very poor translation. The next step would be to use translation agencies or professional translators out there. And they do a good work, but sometimes they lack the context that is needed. And even little things like a single word can make a huge difference for your product. And I have another little story for that. This is how our Brazilian users can sign up for a job alert, for an email that reminds them of new jobs that are on Indeed and they might be interested in. And that sentence asks them if they already have an account before they put the email.
Brazil translation reads, "Do you have an account?"
That's how it is translated in Brazilian, Portuguese for Brazilian. When we launched Portugal, we thought we could actually use the same translation. We asked a professional translator to actually take a look to make sure, and that's what he came up with.
Portugal translation reads, "Do you have a criminal record?"
Kept it. He actually thought it was a good translation, except that in Portugal, the word cadastrado means criminal record. So much different. When we finally hired a person that was native from Portugal, she let us know that we had this little problem on our website and fixed it. So we were properly delivering the content. Not to talk bad about these two systems, because we use and leverage both. When we create a new string of text, we do send it out to Google Translate, and get a translation as a placeholder for the next development. Then we send it out to an online crowdsourcing translation website called 1 Hour Translation that in a few hours, not one, does provide a much better translation done by a human professional translator that then is sent to the country managers that at the quality assurance stage, beside making sure that the string of text it's properly shown, it works well, they also check the translation. They also check the text to make sure that it's consistent with what we always say. It uses the proper terminology, and it delivers the message that it was intended by the English strings.
Poland homepage.
Country managers do much more than that, just that. They inform our engineers department what do we need to properly deliver these languages. So this is Polish, and Slavic languages have cases. Means that some words take a different ending depending where they are in the sentence, what words precedes them, and so on. So to deliver a word that follows a number in Polish, that word changes if the number ends with 0, if it ends with 1, if it ends from somewhere 2 to 4, or if it's 5 or more. Go explain that to the engineer that wrote the English string. So these things need to be taken into account to grant the country managers the flexibility to proper deliver their language. And they account for cultural differences. Languages have both a formal and an informal way of being written and spoken sometimes. It's the case for Spanish. And when we talk to employers, to the companies posting our jobs in Spanish, we do use a formal way, while we use an informal way for our job seekers. Everywhere but Argentina. They use formals everywhere, and it's a different kind of formal.
Brazil homepage.
And last, they take into account business differences. Brazil is a great example where their recruitment business models online actually works the other way around. Job seekers pay to look for jobs, and companies do not pay to post for jobs. So exactly the opposite. So for us, making sure that we stress every time there is a call to action for a job seeker that our product is gratis, is free. It's a huge competitive advantage in the market. So these are just examples to stress how, if you want to go international, text is product. It's not something that you can take on lightly and dismiss or just simply outsource. You need to take very good care of it because it will make the difference in the success of your product. I will now pass it along to David, which will explain and talk about a few other items that can make that difference.
Okay, thank you, Davide. So I'm David. I'm the tech lead of the job search team here at Indeed. And I've been with Indeed about 5 years. And during that time, I've had the opportunity to work with a lot of our internationalization efforts, both with the job search product and with our other products as well. And tonight, what I really want to focus on is not so much launching 1 or 2 countries, but discuss how we were really able to scale internationally. So as Davide said, in one day we launched a ton of new countries. And so how were we able to do that from the operations side? To do that, I want to start by going back to our very first country, the United States. When Indeed was founded, its primary goal was to build a job search engine and get it in front of job seekers as fast as possible. It was a startup, we wanted to build a product. And so during that time, we weren't really all that worried about internationalization. It was something we knew we wanted to do, and in the future we were going to. But to begin with, we were focused on the United States. And so we built a lot into the application. We were going to be dealing with locations that were US-centric, things like states, zip codes. We were going to be dealing with the English language, and primarily the US English language.
Text, how about first international country?
So then the time came, about a year after we launched Job Search, that we wanted to launch internationally. And as Davide showed, our first international country was Canada. Now, at the time that we wanted to launch Canada, our application and our systems were designed for jobs and job seekers in just one country, that country being the United States. Now in Canada, our job seekers were obviously going to want to see jobs in Canada. And so we had to make some decisions of how we were going to do that. The first of which was, how would we determine what country a job seeker was searching for jobs in? And there's a couple of different ways of doing that. You can use IP location. So look at a job seeker's IP address. If it's within the United States, show them the US site. If their IP address falls within Canada, show them the Canadian site and show them jobs for Canada. But this has a couple of downsides, the first of which is search engine crawlers. Search engines are primarily or usually located in a single data center, probably within the United States. And so if we used IP location as our primary way of determining what jobs and what country we're going to show, all of the search engines would see the US most of the time. Another downside would be for traveling job seekers. If a job seeker goes to Canada and wants to search for jobs in the United States, IP location would make that a little bit more difficult. Now, we could introduce things to make that a little bit easier, but for the most part, we would want this process to be as easy as possible. Another option is using parameters. We could append a CO parameter to all of our URLs.
Examples, Indeed.com $CO equals US, Indeed.com $CO equals CA.
So CO equals US would denote the US site, or CO equals CA for the Canadian site.
A long CO link for a London sales position.
One of the downsides with this is we'd have a bunch of ugly URLs. And from the engineering standpoint, we'd have to make sure we appended this URL to every single link that we had on our site. Now we could take a shortcut for job seekers that accept cookies and drop a cookie that says they are for the US. But then we go back down to our crawlers, which will not be sending cookies back to us. And so again, they would continue to see jobs primarily in the United States. A third option is using domains. So www.indeed.com would note that they wanted to see US jobs, where www.indeed.ca would be for Canadian jobs. This also comes with a downside of you can't share cookies across top-level domains, such as .com and .ca. And so doing things such as authentication is a little bit more difficult. If you're logged into www.indeed.com, you're not necessarily logged into www.indeed.ca. In the end, we weighed all the pros and cons and ended up going with domain. And so the www.indeed.com will show you US jobs. Likewise, www.indeed.ca will show you jobs in Canada. So having picked how we're going to determine what country we're going to show the jobs for, how about serving jobs?
Diagram, application, and config boxes within server.
Going back to our original application that was focused entirely on the US, it was a pretty simple setup. We ran our application on a server with a single config file, and that handled all of our traffic. But that application had a lot of US-specific pieces built into it. And so the first thing we wanted to do was extract everything that was specific to the US and move it to an external configuration file. What this would allow us to do is to continue using a single build of our application, but have it serve multiple countries by using this configuration.
Country, distance units, base URL, and search radius.
And so this information that we move to the config file would contain pieces of information such as the distance units. In the US, we use miles. In Canada, we're going to be using kilometers.
US and Canada maps and server diagrams.
And so launching the new country involves setting up a differently configured instance of our application. One of these instances would serve traffic for the United States, and the other instance would serve traffic for Canada. Now, this type of approach is called single tenancy, and it works for a variety of problems. But what we start to notice is as our traffic grew in the United States and as our traffic grew in Canada, we had to scale those different instances independently. So the US would have more servers, and we'd deploy more servers for Canada. This problem started to get worse as we started introducing new countries, and we had to set up a new, differently configured instance of our application.
Diagram, multiple servers in 2 data centers.
Now this starts to get even worse when we introduce multiple data centers, where in every single data center, we're configuring pools of applications configured for specific countries.
Dozens of countries highlighted in orange on a map.
And we wanted to do this for 50+ countries.
Stack of servers times 50.
So this was going to look a little bit more like this, where we were going to have 50 or more differently configured instances of our application running, and then doing that in multiple data centers. It was going to get to a point where operations just would not be able to maintain this effectively, and there would be too many things that could break with this setup.
US and Canadian silhouettes point to a single server diagram.
So we wanted to change things. We saw this pretty early on and changed our approach for handling launching additional countries. And the way this works now is a single application and a single instance can serve all countries. And we did this by introducing country configs.
US and Canada within application box.
With country configs, we pulled all of the country-specific information that we had in the external config and moved it back into the application. And so we're still dealing with a single build of our application that we can use everywhere. Now, job seekers that visit www.indeed.com will activate the US country configuration within our application. Job seekers coming to www.indeed.ca will activate the Canadian country configuration within our application. This type of approach is called multitenancy, where one application is serving a variety of different types of clients, in our case, countries.
US, Canada, and Great Britain within application box.
So now, introducing a new country from the application standpoint is just introducing a new country config, defining things such as the distance units.
One of 2 servers with orange border.
Also, scaling our traffic is no longer dependent on a country-by-country basis. We can scale our application to handle all of our countries, because at each point, we're deploying and adding the same applications, the same configured application that knows how to serve every single country. This makes going into multiple data centers a whole lot easier. Now, country configurations also serve a second purpose, in that they allow us to control features. One of those features is job alerts.
Search results page with an email input field to the right of the list.
So job alerts is a feature of Indeed where after you perform a search, you have the option of signing up for alerts by email. Whenever new jobs match your search, we'll email those to you so you get to see them immediately.
Country configs control features. Job alerts enabled equals false.
And so country configs give us the option to leave job alerts disabled as we're launching in new countries. And so if we want to go to a new country or a new data center and not take the time to invest in the infrastructure required to launch job alerts, we have that option. And then once we have decided that, yes, we do want to make this investment, we're able to do so and then enable that feature. And this works for a variety of different features that we have on our site. Now, that starts to bring us into our next point. If we're going to have a lot of different features that we can toggle on and off, that's going to start introducing a lot of complexity. And so scaling internationalization isn't just about scaling operations. It's also about scaling the product, international, and engineering teams. So from the beginning, Indeed took a stance that we are going to have one product in all countries.
Various search results pages.
If you search for marketing jobs in France, in Italy, and the Netherlands, you're seeing the exact same product, just with different content. And now, I did just say that country configs allow you to control different features. And that's true, but we look at it like this, that you don't need to have job alerts. But if job alerts are enabled in a given country, they're going to work the same way in every single country. And the same goes with other features. We don't necessarily need to have a feature available in that country right away, but when it is there, it's going to act the same in every single country. This has also allowed us to treat each country as a startup, as Davide was explaining. We're able to launch a new country as a minimum viable product, and then as the country managers have time to localize and they're investing more time in that country, we can start enabling more features and bringing it to the full-featured job search application. So one product, all countries was definitely one of the big wins that we had for being able to launch a lot of new countries simultaneously. Now, while all features are the same, there are places where we did need to have some specialization. And one such example of that is with stemming and equivalence rules. So a little bit of background into what stemming is. Stemming is the process of turning multiple variations of a word into a single equivalent root. A good example of this is stemmer, stemming, and stemmed all share the same root of stem. Looking at this in context of search, the search drivers also matches jobs that have driver in the job. Doing this brings back around 400,000 jobs for our job seekers. If we were not going to do stemming, and instead we're just matching on drivers, we'd only have 100,000 jobs returned. So job seekers would be missing out on 300,000 jobs that were likely relevant to what they were looking for. Now, stemming is just one type of equivalence that we deal with when we're trying to make sense of a language. There's also abbreviations. SR period expands to senior. We can normalize accents, take E's with accents, and remove them. Working with gender differences in certain languages, Kaufman making it gender neutral as Kauffrau. And then synonyms. Searches for lawyer should also return search jobs with attorney. Every language has its own equivalence rules.
Imhotep Q norm list.
Another good example of this is on our French site. The French word for salesperson appears twice in our top 10 searches in France. By matching both vendeuse and vendeur, we're able to get a lot more jobs for the job seeker. In this case, we have around 4,000 results. If we removed vendeur and only did vendeuse, we'd be down to 1,200 results. And so we'd be missing out on a ton of jobs that are relevant. For just one day of using vendeuse searches on Indeed.fr, we get nearly 2 times as many clicks because we include vendeur jobs as well.
Why we care.
And so we care about this because we want our search engine to give job seekers the best possible results in every single language. And these stemming and equivalence rules allow us to do that. They help us match more jobs for the job seeker. And so we want to have these high-quality rules in every single language. For us, that means doing it in 28 different languages. So how do we scale stemming?
Java code.
Our initial approach was doing this with code. We had a French stemmer and a German stemmer. And it required engineering whenever we wanted to make a change. And engineers aren't exactly language experts, as I demonstrated with my French pronunciation. However, country managers are. And so for a while, country managers would work with the engineers to help build and improve these stemming rules. But in order to scale this and really make it work with 20 different languages, we needed something better. And what we did was we separated our stemming rules from our code. And we made it into data, introducing a file format. Now, we could change and update these rules and push them into production without having a code deploy. But most importantly, we now were able to build a lot of tooling support on top of them. And the tool that we decided to build is called Babblefish. And so Babblefish is a tribute to Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
A quote from the book by Douglas Adams reads, "The babblefish is small, yellow and leech-like, and probably the oddest thing in the universe. It feeds on brainwave energy. The practical upshot of all this is that if you stick babblefish in your ear you can instantly understand anything in any form of language."
Now, Babblefish gives the country managers the ability to create these rules. So here I'm showing a suffix rule, the EUSE to EUR, to match the Vendus. Now, country managers can update these stemming rules without any engineering involvement. And they can continue to maintain and build these high-quality rules in all of our languages. Now, we're going to be discussing a little bit more about stemming in a future blog post and tech talk, but what I really wanted to get across tonight was how we were able to engineer something that looked like a code change and turn it into a content change. And because of this, we've been able to more easily scale and improve a lot of different areas of our site. Stemming and equivalence rules is just one of them. We've also done this with location representation, normalization, stop words, and relevancy rules. I'm going to invite Davide back up to go into a bit more depth on location representation.
So let's talk about location representation and how we scale that aspect as well.
Spanish homepage.
Indeed works the same, as we said, everywhere. And everywhere we had a what box and a where box. So when we launched all these countries, one of the problems is how do we build, how do we fill and reproduce all the location requests that we're going to get, how we're going to build these databases in a comprehensive, structured way. Locations can be of many different kinds, and we assume that we're going to be receiving different requests in many different countries on the world. They could be zip codes, or cities, or states, or counties. And this is the one we were used to, the United States. We had to categorize them and link them together so they would make sense. And we have to do this everywhere. And in other countries, not everything makes exactly the same sense. So in Italy, we have zip codes and cities, but there's no states. Those are called, these administrative divisions are called regions, and they're much smaller than the states are in the United States. There are no counties, there are provinces. And in this case, instead, they're kind of the same size, or sometimes even bigger. And we also have an additional administrative division, which we have to take into consideration, which are municipalities, which our users most likely are going to use. And the same problem, categorize them, link them together, and do this for more than 50 countries, very different from each other. So how do we do this?
Download a database. Geonames homepage.
As for translation, there's always the quick, easier way of downloading a database. And we did this. With a lot of countries, we pulled location from an open software called Geonames.
Add a location input form.
And then we explored the alternative of creating our database internally on our own. Both approaches had pros and cons. On the Geonames side, you had tons of information in no time, but then there's a lot of edits to make, both because sometimes the information is not correct, or sometimes it simply doesn't match how our users were searching for locations in that country. On creating a database, that's just, it could potentially be a lot of work just because you have to do it pretty much from the ground up.
Location tools.
So at the end, we fix it the same way that David explained for stemming. We fix it pretty quickly and having very accurate data thanks to our engineering team that built tools for us to be able to identify very quickly what was missing from our location database and add a location when it was necessary.
Add locations.
This is Masdar City in UAE, which was missing our database while 1,620 people searched for it. We could quickly see that and quickly fix it, and it was deployed within a few days. Or we could actually edit locations just to match the way our users search them. We always had Moscow in our database. We didn't have the 20-something different aliases, variations that users use to search for Moscow. And that was extremely important to always match what our users wanted to do. And again, having these tools allow us to do fairly quickly and in a very comprehensive way in many countries and many languages.
Full database.
That's the result, a full, well-structured database that we can leverage without much engineering involvement, simply with country managers working on the content, being able to maintain that content every time is necessary without having to bug engineers, and providing high-quality structured data. This was used for many other use.
Orange Italy silhouette over borders of Alaska.
This is our attempt of fitting Italy inside Alaska about 8 times. And it kind of does if you spend a little bit more time. Alaska is much bigger than Italy, while Italy at the same time and over 83 times its population. So these are very, very different countries, and people are going to use location searches differently.
Radius.
In the United States, we mostly take into account locations and jobs that are nearby the ones the users is looking for through radius. And the same thing happened internationally. The radius in the US is 25 miles, as always worked pretty well. So that's the number we started from, and we tested in many different countries, different variation, using kilometers instead of miles, and 25 was kind of a magic number. It kind of worked pretty much everywhere. Every time we changed it, we kind of got worse results than the other. But we thought that such difference in their geographical structure sooner or later would have accounted for something else. And it did.
Ile-de-France map.
So in France, we noticed that a lot of sources of job we were crawling and indexing actually posted as a location, not the cities like Paris, but the administrative division, the state, to talk in US terms, which is Ile-de-France. We're really butchering French today. And that created a problem because our users instead were searching for jobs in Paris, and those two things were not matching. So we decided that instead of offering simply jobs in Paris, and the jobs in the Paris radius of 25 kilometers, we would also show the jobs that were included in the administrative division, in the state, having that information and be able to replicate that information for every city, for every country Indeed was in, thanks to that database. And that resulted in an 8% click increase in France and in all the countries where this new way of delivering location was turned on.
Text localization as product development.
This is just an example on how when you're going global, our advice, the lesson we'll learn is that the way you develop your product needs to have international needs in mind.
Localization as product. Indeed mobile app on iPhone screens.
And the next one is another example of it. If you have used Indeed, you have probably seen that some jobs have an Indeed Apply feature with them, which means it's a feature that allows you to apply directly on Indeed with one click using your Indeed resume without going to the original source. And that is particularly useful if you're doing your job search from a mobile device, being that easy. In Indeed Apply, you apply, uploading a resume and a cover letter, which is what's needed in most of the cases. Problem is, how do we get this? How do we decide when a job is allowed to use Indeed Apply or not? One of the ways is that we created rules to understand if the email that we see inside the description of the job is an email to send your application, or maybe it's an email just to contact that person. So in these rules, go look for words that give us that information. So besides the fact that this was extremely important to have these rules localized to actually able to have this feature on in many countries, but this is something that's similar to what we talked before. So here, mostly what I want to talk about is not the impact of the rules to have the features on, but it's more like the impact that the message that rules being hit, rules being used, and jobs being not using Indeed Apply told us what story we got from it. Some rules also were telling us, do not use Indeed Apply on those jobs. And in many cases, these rules were related to the fact that jobs in other countries, in other languages, will require multiple documentation in order to apply, not just a resume and a cover letter. This is German for transcript that forbids us from using Indeed Apply on these jobs. We decided to check how many of these jobs did not have Indeed Applies because of these kind of rules, so the impact of these local rules in all our countries. And we established that if we had this possibility of multiple attachment, we would actually increase the number of Indeed directly applicable jobs by 17%, with some pretty crazy results in some countries, like 200% in Germany, 33% in Japan. Very impactful feature if the local need is taken into consideration. This feature is currently not on Indeed, is going to be tested soon, and if it works well, it will be deployed. As everything, localization is product, therefore is treated like everything else at Indeed, like product at Indeed. Everything is tested to make sure that the results are positive, that there are no negative effects, and that this balance between good and bad is good at a global level.
Save alert button alternatives and increased clicks, with Activate being the highest at plus 12.8%.
So when we test new things in English or in the United States, this is the text on the button to activate job alerts. We do that everywhere. And single little differences can make an enormous difference in the success of your product. Last, we want to give you some advice, step away a little bit from product, and just share some tips on how do you decide where you want to go. I'm sure you have some countries in mind, so where do you decide you're going to go first?
Where to launch?
We measure, indeed, international coverage in terms of internet population and total GDP, and these are definitely good metrics to keep in mind and to keep track of at the country level to decide if it's worth going there or not. But for some countries, absolute numbers don't say much. You have to use something different, something more specific. UAE, United Arab Emirates, for example, if you consider their total GDP being or total population, they're not impressive number, but when you go to their GDP per capita, is actually slightly higher than the US. So can create a very important business opportunity for some products. Of course, you want to check the size of the online market of your industry, recruitment for our product. And if social media is part of your strategy to acquire traffic, or if you are in social media, the penetration in the country is definitely a key variable. Languages. We did this in many languages, and we can tell you that they were not all made equal. Some of them are more complicated than others. Some countries are, people in those countries speak multiple languages, so those things add a layer of complication to your product that you want to take into consideration. And market landscape. Who's there already? What's your competition? Is the market fragmented, or is the market monopolized by a very strong player? And how is it trending?
Pie charts, different traffic segments.
Or how's the market segmented? These are two countries where Indeed is in and very successfully for. They have a very, very different segmentation of their traffic. Country one, desktop still predominant, tablet not bad, mobile is a third. Country two, mobile is pretty much all you need. If your mobile product is not strong enough, maybe it's not a good idea to go there yet. And other considerations depending on what kind of sources of traffic.
Pie chart, search engine market share, Russia.
If search engine optimization, getting organic traffic from Google is going to be a key player in your traffic acquisition strategy, you want to consider that in some countries, Google is not the top search engine, and it's Yandex in Russia, or it's Baidu in China, it's Naver in Korea, Yahoo in Japan, or Seznam in Czech Republic. So these are all, these and the one discussed are just some of the things that we invite you to keep in mind, and we invite you to also research the other items that you have seen listed them, because again, they are all important for your success, and that works for us. That did work. In first quarter of 2014, we reached 140 million global unique visitors, and we were very proud that over 58% of them came from outside the United States.
Competitive landscape. A table of the top 3 sites in various countries.
Indeed is the #1 job site, not only in the US, but in other many primary economies. And it's in the top 3 in many of the countries we're in. And our goal is to be the leader everywhere.
Logo, Indeed.